Well, Happy New Year, and thank you for having me join you today. And I understand that we also have people on Blackboard joining us as well, so thank you for joining us. So I work at the Apollo Research Institute, and what we do is we conduct academic research on main areas of concern across the United States, relevant usually to workforce issues and education. What I'm going to show you today was actually the output of a series of research studies in addition to expert workshops that we had here in Palo Alto with corporate leaders, educators, government policymakers. My personal interest as a visiting scholar at Stanford is on the impact of technology on society, work, and education. And so to me, these two are intersecting, and I think that's important. So you'll see that come out in my theme. I also do a number of activities for women outreach, and I am very excited to tell you that this month my team has launched. We've had 12 people on my team work on a book called Women Lead, and we've conducted quantitative and qualitative studies this past year, and we had some really exciting results. So thank you so much for having me. So let me talk about a little bit about what came out of our Future of Work, Future Skills, Future Careers expert workshops. Well, number one, finding longevity. You're going to live to 100. And that's a really difficult concept for people to write. I see people laughing already. If you're 18 years old, you're living to 100, case closed. Now think about what that means to you. In fact, you probably already know people who have lived to 100 or are on track. So it's very feasible. Here's what's changing. Your work span will also change with that, right? So my parents were thinking about working for 20 or 30 years. I'm thinking about working for 50 to 70 years. And why is that? Their lifelong dream was to own a home. My lifelong dream is to afford to live to 100, okay? You got it, right? And we asked this question in our women's study. I was curious, what does that mean to you? And most women say, I outlive men. This is really real for me. So I need to afford to live to 100, which means I need to stay healthy enough to work longer. I need to stay educated, and I need to stay skilled. And these are all realities that a lot of us are facing. If you look at it from a corporate point of view, how is it playing out? You have 3-4 generations in your workforce, right? The baby boomers, the youngest one, by the way, is 50 today or this year, right? This whole workforce is staying in the workforce, and generation X and Y are saying, hello, right? It's time for me to move up. So lots of complications around living longer, right? Okay, so let's just talk about some of the trends that we talked about at these expert workshops. We're living in a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. It's actually a military term that came up as the day-to-day life of a military soldier lives in a VUCA world, but our corporate leaders are saying, no, 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 no. Having a company today, running a group today is a VUCA experience, right? We can't project anything anymore. And everything is in this social media world is instantaneous and changing. So it's very important to understand the new complexities that are out in the business world. Second, we're a globally connected world. I call it from eBay to Odesk, right? On eBay, I can create a new market dynamic in an hour. And I've done that. I've opened up a storefront. I've taken PayPal, right? It's collected money, and I've had a global business and started that in an hour. That's profound, right, what you can do today than in the past. At the same time, we have Odesk, who participated with us, and there's a whole global marketplace of talent. I can get PhDs, statistics people, video people, marketing people, anywhere in the world, and some people, right, it's all bidding, will work for $1 an hour, because that's all you need wherever they're living to survive. So think about, from a talent point of view, lots of pressures. As an employer, I'd like to use lower cost talent because that means I can get more done. As an individual, I feel competition, right? Now I have to stay faster, smarter, and more competitive than all that other talent out there. Globally connected world, technology world. They say that today, getting pushed at you in your emails and different social technology, or however you're consuming information, you get the equivalent of about 174 newspapers worth of text every single day. And isn't it interesting that Newsweek just printed their final issue? So the whole idea of reading, it's there. Consuming text and information, it's there. It's just in a very different format. Technology has transitioned so many industries, and that's some of the videos I'm going to show you of how technology is really changing the industry so quickly, it might be happening faster than you're realizing. I mean, think about it. You probably have an iPad, iPhone, you might be on Facebook, you might be on LinkedIn, you might be using Twitter. All of these things happened in the last 10 years. Very fast, very compressed, and that will continue. How do you keep up? Superstructuring. So this is a concept that many of the corporate leaders have said is because of technology, because of the changes in society, because of the trends, our companies have actually changed. Some people, like Cisco Systems, IBM, Deloitte, and Pricewaterhouse, have virtualized their corporations. It may have started as a cost reduction for some, but actually it's a great way to find talent because a lot of times people don't want to move. They want to live where they work and work where they live. So now that we have the technology that connects people, that's an opportunity. At the same time, if you look down in Silicon Valley, you have these mega campuses, Apple, Google, Facebook, now even HP, creating very large campuses where they can bring in the talent to collaborate. The philosophy is that engineering need more collaboration together on site. And that's another option. But then you go down to LA and you have the Hollywood option, right? Where it's the best star or the best producer combined with the best talent, assemble in teams and then go on location. So many different options for work. You look downtown Palo Alto where I live, there's all these little boutiques just popping up of collaboration, like mini Starbucks, where you have collaboration centers for individuals who are starting businesses. I've seen them in New York in hotels. The lobbies become transformed into startup environments. So there's a lot of different ways that people are actually creating and structuring the way that work gets done. It's not just done in one physical location anymore. So let's look at some of the trends. So what we came out with, what I first showed you, was some of the future of work dynamics. There's about 9 of them. And then we discussed and synthesized a lot of research and data and trends and came up with 10 skills. Now, I'm not going to go through all the skills, but all of them are available on our site, and we have the whole research short and long versions on our site. But let me just go through a couple of examples. Sense making, giving meaning to data. It's a skill. Let me give you a simple story. Last July, I got a call from the customer service manager from Nordstrom out at Stanford Mall. They said, Tracy, we missed you. I said, missed me? Why did you miss me? They said, Tracy, we collected your data for the last 3 years. We actually know when you shop, what departments you shop in, and we even think we know your favorite salesperson. And you usually shop every December and every August because that's when we have our big sale. And we actually know that you must be in business because you buy a lot of suits and conservative kinds of attire. So we wanted to make sure that it's July, that you're coming in this August because you missed last year. So I said, okay. And I go, in fact, what we're going to do, Tracy, we're going to give you a $50 gift certificate. It's going to be waiting at the store with Heather, because Heather is the salesperson that you tend to buy the most from, right? So what's going on here? Nordstrom is using data analytics, right? They're taking my credit card information, they're looking at my buying patterns, they're looking at my ebbs and flows, and they're trying to figure out a few things. One, how do I get more intimate with this customer? right? Let her know that I know about her. She's special. Number two is, how do I motivate this customer, right? So there's the gift certificate. But number three is they actually know all of my patterns and are using my data to increase sales. At the end of the day, to increase sales. Well, restaurants are doing this. Target, every time you're going through, anytime you have an inventory badge going through, someone is collecting data about you. Facebook is collecting data about you to do something with you at some point. Well, you need people. You need people who know how to analyze that data, right? So that's, Google says, the sexiest career in the 2020 is the data scientist, people who actually understand how to collect the data and interpret it. Sense making. Next, the new media ecology. What this is about, and media literacy, is being able to use multimedia as a way to either communicate, distribute, market, right? So I will be using some multimedia today because I realize as a presenter, as an educator, my students have told me I'm pretty dull unless I start to bring in some visual medium, right? So I learned pretty early in education that the visuals is the way to capture people. Well, that has transitioned the fashion industry, the newspaper industry, the retail industry, multimedia. I mean, students tell me they have to come in now with portfolios, proving that they understand how to use all of these technologies and what kind of skills they can bring to the firm. So let me show you a couple of examples. The first one is in healthcare. Now, I show this because my students love CSI. They watch the show and they all dream about cutting up bodies. Right? So I said, but really, guys, yes, you'll experiment with dead bodies, I'm sure. Subject matter expertise. But in reality, you will probably be conducting virtual autopsies. So what is this? This is augmented virtual reality. British firm being used to connect multiple people from multiple locations to do a virtual autopsy. So again, it's the subject matter expertise combined with the education, but we're overlaying it now with a layer of technology, right? So technology is impacting, and healthcare in particular is an industry that has requirements now in technology. The Institute of Medicine explained to us that now the RN, the associate's degree, is no longer the de facto degree. They really want to see nurses have BSNs, bachelor's of nursing degree, and technology. Okay, the next example, this one is going to be very loud, so I won't talk during it, but it's art history professor sent it to me as multimedia used often in her art history class and in museums. You may have seen this. And this one is e-paper. So this was very interesting. I was taken into a lab here down in Silicon Valley. This is video. This is very thin video, right? You're using it in a lot of devices now, but now it can also be used in a newspaper. Transformation of the industry. You shake the paper. They know that she's in a location. She's customizing the headline. They know that she's a runner. You can customize the ad for Nike on the back. Right, the whole industry is becoming very focused on customization. How can I make this location-centric, right, Foursquare, a lot of the activities that they do. E-paper. Newspapers is an industry that has been totally transformed by technology. So those are just three examples of industries that have had an impact of how multimedia has interspersed into it. And you have to say, what kind of skills, what kind of education do students need today to be able to participate and make contributions in the industries moving forward and actually help us move ahead? Cross-cultural competency. This is an area which we discussed at length in our workshop about how it has actually evolved, right? So let me explain to you, when I started international business, I actually was in manufacturing down at Apple Computer, and I would spend all my time traveling overseas to see manufacturing sites. What was really required of me was the manufacturing expertise that I could export to our partners overseas. Things like language and cultural competency wasn't as critical then, although today many of the firms would much prefer to have people with language skills, preferably from the country, to be able to conduct business. So it's really changed from an export-import into a global marketplace. So let me give you an example of what my first experience, and then I'm going to bring you forward.
Do you want me to start from the right or start from the left?
Okay, right, so that's years ago. That was international business, and that's still there, but that was the exporting importing philosophy. So let me just continue my story. So here I am at Apple Computer, and we're dealing with very large factory sites. And I was pretty much commuting back and forth to Japan. They put me into Japanese, actually, language classes because we had many of those experiences. And we said, we're really working with this firm, and we want to bring them something, right? We want to, they've just been so great, but there's hundreds of them. What kind of gift can we bring them? And we said, well, back then, the Apple logo was, and the T-shirts were still very hot. They're still hot today. They're hot back then. I'm dating myself because they had many more colors back when I worked there. But we decided that we would bring a T-shirt for everybody, and that would be very exciting. And so we did, but because there were so many, we shipped them over, and we got to the boardroom. There they were in a nice big brown box, and we opened up the box and handed out the T-shirts. And people bowed and smiled at us, and they were very happy. And the next day we went down, and when you're in manufacturing and you're working overseas, you need to do these we call them line walks. You do them in the morning, you do them in the afternoon, you check the inventory, you check the line, you look for problems, is there something going wrong. So the next morning we went down to do our line walk, and everybody was wearing the Apple T-shirts. And we said, oh, that's really exciting because they really like the T-shirts. And so the next day we went down, like day 2, did our line walk, and everybody was still wearing the Apple T-shirts again. So we said, wow, either they really like these T-shirts, or, they must be going home at night and washing them or something, right? So the third day, we go down, do our line walk again, and there they are in the Apple T-shirts again. And we said, okay, there is a problem here. So we get everybody back up to the boardroom, and we say, we're so happy that you really like the T-shirts that we brought. We're so happy that you really like the gifts. And our host looked at us with disgust and said, gifts? We thought these things were uniforms, right? So what happened, right? That cross-cultural competency. We did not know that you needed to present and wrap, and there was a whole protocol around presenting gifts, right? So we made a big faux pas. Okay, let's zip forward. I Had my great stint at Apple. I actually worked at HP. Now I'm at Cisco Systems. Cisco Systems is a global company. My goodness, I started when it was under $1 billion, but by the time I left, it was about $40 billion. And guess what? We started with sales meetings in one location, but as you grow to be $40 billion, we were now connecting the headquarters in India with the headquarters in Europe, with the headquarters here in San Jose. And they had a technology called telepresence. And telepresence could use video conferencing to now connect countries and headquarters together. So that was great. Well, the next dilemma was, how are we going to get people all on the stage together, right? If you have the head of India and the head of Europe and the head of San Jose, we love this whole idea about virtual collaboration, but let's take it up to the next level. So this is what they've done. Not only did they connect the teams, but they introduced a new technology to overlay telepresence called holography telepresence. Let me show you an example. This is how CNN uses it. I think it's a better example, but this is how our company meetings evolve.
There are 35 high-definition cameras ringing me. They will be around the center, and they shoot my body at different angles. And I'm told that transmits what looks like an entire body image back there in New York. These cameras will talk to the cameras in New York, so they move, and they know when to move when the cameras in New York move. And it looks a little different from a real person there, but it's pretty remarkable.
It's still just the yelling, and you look like that's the yelling, you want that to be yelling. That's actually the important policy of this. What are they looking?
So, interesting enough, I had a wonderful invitation this morning. I was actually over at a studio before interviewing with CNN. And here I walk in to the studio, and it's all electronic. There's literally only 2 people in there today, right? Remember, the newsrooms would be cast of thousands in there. And I said, what's happening? What's different? And they said, it's all about technology. So what did they do? They wired me up, just like we're wired up here. I talked to the host who happened to be in New York, but they were filming it in another area, right, and taping it in another area. The whole industry. So I said to them, what kind of skills do you need to work in the newsroom today? What kind of skills does the producer need to have? And they said it's all about technology. You really have to have that subject matter expertise. You have to have the experience and education in your industry, but you need to now figure out the whole technology overlay. Very interesting, very exciting. In fact, it's going to be on tonight. So it was the Anderson Cooper show. Very excited. So let's talk about telepresence and robotics. I actually took this photo at Stanford. I was invited to a meeting, and Susan is actually, you probably can't see her in there. That's telepresence combined now with robotics. So what is an Antibot? It's a robot. It moves. Susan sits home in Cupertino or in campus here. She takes over the Antibot and makes it walk, right? And I can adjust it. Susan and I went eye to eye and walked together. Thinking about that inventory line in Japan. Wow, if I had that, I wouldn't have had to fly to Japan because I could sit at home, see through the eyes, and I can converse with people. Profound. Well, Susan checked out of the Antibot, and Joe checked in. But Joe was in India, and Joe needed to participate in the meeting. So basically, the Antibot is mobile robotics combined with telepresence that you can remotely control. Well, we thought about in education. Imagine doing nursing practicals using the Antibot, right? You always need to have someone oversee. Imagine having medical conversations with your doctor using the Antibot or having expertise. Imagine as a business person not having to fly anymore because there's Antibots at various locations and you just check in and check out like a meeting room. Very exciting. And actually not very expensive. Novel and adaptive thinking. This skill is about, I would describe it as competing with machines, right? How can we take the machines to the next level and help us invent something new? So let me give you an example. Down here in Almaden Valley with IBM, they have Watson. Watson is a very large computer analytics. It plays Jeopardy, right? People come in and made a big deal. You never can win against Watson because it always has the right answer. Well, IBM said, IBM came to one of our, are we beeping? No? Okay. Came to one of our sessions and said, scientists at IBM in the healthcare division said, why don't we think about using Watson, using the machine to take us to the next level with cancer? Why don't we put into Watson all of the prescriptions, all of the data, all of the symptoms, all of the information that we can find about cancer, and see if Watson, using artificial intelligence and analytics, can help us find a cure faster than we can ourselves. Right? Can we use machines to bring us forward to the next level? So let me show you the next example in healthcare. Because of my manufacturing background, I am aware that 3D technology, 3D printing, has become a way to create prototypes, right? And I'll show you a photo of what it is. But it used to be that you would build a prototype, test it, before you went into mainline manufacturing. Before you produce 100,000 items, you want to make sure you got it right. Well, today you can actually do that on a printer. You can pour in, just think about your printer, it's just bigger. You can pour in metal, liquid metal, or you could pour in liquid plastic, program it to print, and it will build a prototype. Pretty interesting. Let's take it to the next level, healthcare. This physician uses 3D printing to create ears. Fascinating. That's a novel and adaptive thinking, taking something that is seemingly mundane, adding some technology, adding in creative thinking and thought, and coming out with a whole innovation process. I don't know if you noticed his credentials is biomedical engineering, STEM. So that's why I try to remind my students, this is so cool. But yes, you want to work at Facebook. Yes, you want to make ears. Yes, you want to do that. Think about what courses you need to take, and I'll come back to that. Okay, let's talk about cars. Because I actually think that cars itself have gone through a transformation. When you think about it, a lot of us just had a car, right? It was 4 wheels. But today, now you can get a very low, inexpensive car, like the Nano. You can get a very expensive car, like the Bugatti. You can get an electric car. You can get a hybrid car. And yes, there is a robotic car as well. So cars have gone through a lot of transformation. In fact, I'm guessing if you've bought a car in the last 5 or 10 years, you can't even repair your car because it's so technical and complicated. It is transformed. You can't even change your oil anymore, let alone a tire, right, without knowing. Well, General Motors is the whole call center. You can call in as a driver because they figured out people don't know how to use the air conditioning. They don't know how to use the GPS. They actually have to have people on a call center to help us drive our complicated, complex cars. So then we flip over to BMW, and they say, well, the auto mechanic has to become more sophisticated with technology. So this is this is their cars being worked on by an auto mechanic for BMW, who is actually using augmented virtual reality glasses with audio commentary and training, typing in, and he's responding and looking and fixing the car. Very different, right? Even the auto mechanic is changing. So he's getting the instructions. He's using his data goggles to see, using augmented virtual reality, what he needs to do. He talks back when he's done, and then we move on to the next step. The implications in training, right? If you're having to do any kind of manufacturing or training. And as you know, you probably are familiar with how Google is creating some of these whole cities using this virtual reality. The way that we can use the technology in so many industries. Fascinating. So let me just touch back on the autonomous car, because every time I come back and forth from Palo Alto to San Francisco, you always see the car. And if you haven't seen the car, you usually see two of the Google people probably sitting in the back seat working in the computers, and the car has no driver. It's a combination of using GPS with computer programming, artificial intelligence, and sensors, and actually it drives you. Well, it's going to go mainstream in 2018. It is a Toyota Prius. Las Vegas already has the permit for taxi drivers. And the way I learned about it, because I was in San Francisco, and a taxi driver who was taking me to Caltrain was very distraught because Google applied for taxi permits up here. And he said, I didn't think my job would ever go away, but obviously I'm going to be replaced by robotic cars. Now, if you think about it, so automation has certainly replaced many positions. But at the same time, if you talk to the Google side, they say, well, what about handicapped drivers? Now they can drive. Now they can get around in a car. What about all those people who are killed by drunk drivers, or texting drivers, or drivers who are eating, or drivers who are distraught or road rage? All of that can go away now. Like, you can actually have a safer experience. So there's two sides, right, where you have the robotics might be replacing or displacing certain jobs, but then it's adding value in other areas. Other examples. Whoops. Okay, well, let it play. I'll explain it. Do people in the room know this scene? Okay. Because I know that young people may not know this. The infamous manufacturing line. Yeah, so, okay, we're lucky that people know this. So manufacturing, right, and it's near and dear to my heart, because part of what I was doing at Apple was the labor in the United States was getting so expensive. for us to make products, but the consumers said, no, you got to bring down the cost of products, right? So you had this whole phenomena of outsourcing starting, where can we find people who will work for lower wages? Well, that's actually transforming yet again. I don't know if I'm going to show you Baxter. Now, Baxter is a new robot out of San Jose, U.S. made, U.S. developed, and Baxter is about $22,000, period, for life. So Baxter doesn't eat, doesn't need salary raises, doesn't need breaks. So Baxter is a pretty efficient replacement for labor globally for the manufacturing line. In fact, people are so excited about Baxter, they could almost see that manufacturing would return to the United States using, right, United States robotics, right? So again, a transformation in an industry, right, people thinking through, right, how can I compete with robots or technology? So I'll just show you what Baxter reminds me of this Lucy scene, just a robotic version.
Meet Baxter. Baxter is using robotics flagship product in the revolutionary new category of robots with common sense. Baxter is a low-cost and highly adaptive robot for manufacturing applications, and is so easy to use that non-technical workers can train it. Baxter increases workforce productivity for factories in the U.S. to compete with low-cost offshore labor. And using robotics practices waste research. How robots are made in America.
So Baxter, so it's interesting that if you taught in that, it said you actually don't have to be technical to train Baxter, which is a very interesting point. If you're familiar with Mark Andronison, he made a comment recently in Silicon Valley about the world is changing. You'll either be on the side of the world that you'll be creating the machines, or you'll be on the side of the world that will work for the machines. And I think that there's some sort of segregation starting to happen between the technical and the non-technical. And yes, you can still get jobs today without the technology background, but are those the jobs that you want? Is that the job that, you know, where you want to be? I was on a KCBS on Jobs Friday, and someone called in and said, you know, what about truck driving? You know, there's such demand for truck drivers, in fact, but the turnover is 89%. So there are these jobs out there that people may be interested in, but then are they really interested in them? Right? So very interesting commentary. Smart machines and automation. This is the robotic bellboy. This is actually, I believe, in New York City. You go into the hotel, the bellboy picks up your bag and puts it into storage. You can, you know, code it and pull it out. So do you really need bellboys anymore, right? So just things to think about. The other one, of course, is the hairdresser. People say the hairdresser will never be replaced. Well, apparently there's a robotic barber available. Whether you trust it or not is another story, but there's a robotic barber. Okay, and finally I'll show you, someone actually who saw me speak sent me this. And they said, Tracey, you just have to show your audience. I always try to show a military application of robotics. Usually I show the bear, because the bear picks up the wounded warriors. And they said, Tracey, you have to show the group the donkey. We actually use this in the military and in places where obviously people don't want to go, or there's a lot of ammunition firing, or fires, right, distressed areas. Phenomenal. Phenomenal. So wouldn't you want your students to be creating these things, creating the next robotics that can help people in different ways? Okay. Now let's just talk a little bit about education and skills. You know, when I got out of college, you really didn't need college. Actually, half of my friends went to high school. Another piece of my friends went to some, like, community college. And then a few of us, like myself, had diehard parents who believed that we needed that liberal arts degree to get through life, and that would last us forever, right? Forever. And but we all got jobs, right? That was our life then. Now you flash forward into the year 2000, and life is very different. the high school degree is becoming less important and less necessary for jobs, but the BA, the associate's degree, and the master's degree are increasingly becoming much more important. In fact, when we look at employment and salary compared to education, we see direct relationships. So then I said, well, let's look at, this is Georgetown's data, by the way, let's look at the different professions, the ones that are hot, the ones that people want to work for. Healthcare, right? Very large hiring opportunities. The blue and the light maroon, master's and bachelor degrees. These are the requirements now for these industries. STEM, bachelor's and master's degrees, and also you should be seeing some, advanced degrees in there as well. Science, technology, engineering, and math. Education, master's and bachelor's degree, and actually past or higher, master's or higher, and managerial professional office. Then this is with the Milken Institute. I work with a lot of different partners. So in the beginning, I talked a little bit about the Futures Institute here in Palo Alto. I also work with the Milken Institute in Santa Monica. And I said to them, if we went across the United States and looked at all of the metro areas and added 1 year of education, just 1 year of education to the baseline that a metro area has, what would happen to that metro area in terms of GDP and personal wages? Well, they would go up. So on average, you can see the percentages on the right, but in general, personal wages would go up by over 10%. Again, just looking for, is there a correlation between education and salary? But here's what I like to talk about, because I think this is the real gotcha. 75% of jobs by 2020 will have a technology component. And I just think it's really important that you impress upon your students how critical it is, again, to have the subject matter expertise, the skills, the experience, the education, and the technology. So let's talk a little bit about the future of you and your students and careers. This is the amount of time students spend on career planning in a year. It's an hour and a half. This is how much time they spend sleeping. Why is that important? You're going to spend a third of your life working, right? Think about companies. They're really not offering, not all companies, some are, but not all are offering the same kinds of support systems for when students come out of school. Companies used to take over, right? When I went to school, they would take over and put you in these elaborate training programs. They would pick up where the school left off. Now companies are saying, school, you figure it out. Deliver me a product, a student product that can work, that can immediately migrate into my environment. So that's pretty tough stuff. So what's changed? Well, a lot of things have changed. I think most importantly is that I, and probably you, were raised in a classical world. The liberal arts degree or the professional, for some of us, was just enough. But now students are entering and are born into a technology world. So having the liberal arts degree may not be enough for them to be employed by a Facebook or a Google or a CNN in the future, right, or in some of these other areas. So another big change that happened is when I got out, there was like 20-some-odd thousand job types. Today, there's over 35,000 job types. And I'm sure there's many more, and we know there's many more to be created. So how do you plan for that? That's really tough. We as educators, right, need to start connecting the dots, I think, and community colleges do that so well, with industry, which is, what are the jobs? Where are they going? What kind of course should I take from day one and map out my job and career? Transdisciplinarity. If there's one thing that you can remember, because I mentioned over and over again, is transdisciplinarity. It's the key person. Came up over and over and over again from our corporate leaders. Status quo is no longer an option for employees. You cannot be a status quo employee anymore. You need to be a T person. That's a person who has breadth and depth, and I would add the T overlay of technology. So breadth and depth with technology. People who keep honing their skills, keep lifelong learning, keep developing their experiences, and keep relevant. Because after all, you're going to be working 50 or 60 years. So the planning part. Universities, corporations, and individuals I see all having now a more vested interest. I see a lot more programs developing of connecting the three. Individuals, I tell my students, don't wait for your school. Don't wait for the company. Take control of your career. Because at the end of the day, it's you. You have to afford to live to 100. Nobody else is going to take care of you. No one is going to develop that plan. You're going to have to develop that plan yourself. Make it your finance plan, your health plan, your work plan, your education plan, your family plan, your retirement plan. Start thinking about it at a young age because you have a long life ahead of you. Okay, I'm going to stop here. I appreciate your attention and time this morning. I know that was long, and it feels like it's a little warm in here, too. But I think I've used my time, but I guess if you have a question or two, I'd be happy to. Otherwise, I can talk to people or email afterwards. Yes, ma'am. Yes, so what I can do is give you a PDF of the visuals only. I am prohibited by copy law because I rip off of everywhere and anything. So I'm only allowed to show it as a lecture. But yes, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
What is your educational background?
So my educational background, and I'm going to give you the little story here. Immigrants' parents, New York, insisted I get a liberal arts degree because they felt that was the way to get ahead in the United States. Got the liberal arts degree, took 100 interviews, but I got a job. And I got a great job. I worked at Vogue. I loved it. Right? But my grandmother got sick. She had Alzheimer's. We ended up having to move out to California. We're a tiny little family, immigrant family. My parents wanted her to help us together. I came out to California. My brother's at Stanford. He was the smart one in the family, and said to me, you can sleep on my floor for 6 months. Go get a job. We thought it'd be easy. I was selling ad space for Vogue. How hard could it be to get a job? It was hard. I couldn't get a job. So here's what I did. I had to do 3 jobs. By day, I had to join temp staffing firms to get into companies. The reason I couldn't get a job is I wasn't technical. I didn't know how to use a computer. Number 2 is I worked at Nordstrom on weekends because I needed clothes, right? Number 3 is I worked at restaurants at night because you needed food. I finally said the hottest company in Silicon Valley is called Apple Computer. Please get me a temp job in Apple. And they did. Took me 6 months to make it permanent, and I was made permanent. But I got the job that nobody wanted. I got the manufacturing job. So I thought I died and went to hell, but I didn't. I didn't die. And I went around the world, thanks to Apple. I went everywhere in the world, just like I was talking to manufacturing stores. But I wasn't getting promoted. And I said to Apple, why am I not getting promoted? They said, because you don't have advanced degree. You're not a business or engineering background, and you don't have technical proficiency. So I said, oh my God, so I better get my gear together and get an MBA, right? Evaluated the two and said, I'm more inclined towards business. I went at night and on weekends, slugged it out, took every kind of course that Apple had on technology, because gosh darn it, I was not going to let somebody tell me I can't get promoted because I'm not smart enough. Finished the MBA, boom, Apple has the biggest layoff in Silicon Valley, 5,000 people, right, out the door. All of that I thought went to waste. No, 5,000 people out there, it's very competitive, right? People couldn't get jobs. I got a job. I got a job at HP. In fact, I got a job as a manager at HP with a 22% raise. Yes, it was international manufacturing. I wasn't too happy about that, but I had a job. Why? Because I had an education and had technology proficiency, and I had international experience, and I had expertise in manufacturing. So I said, okay, I get this game. you need education to stay ahead in Silicon Valley because that's how competitive it is. So I said to HP, to my manager, can I go on for a doctorate? While I was at Apple in my MBA, my thesis was on women doing business in Japan. And it got picked up and made into a book. So now I want to write more books because women tell me keep going down this venue. And my mentors are telling me, you can't write books unless you have PhD background. You've got to take that MBA and combine it with a PhD. And here's what my manager at HP said, no, we don't believe in it. You have enough education. It will suffice. Fortunately for me, there was a little firm called Cisco Systems, $750 million, so it wasn't so little anymore, saying, you know, you have that international manufacturing background and you're technical with an MBA. Do you want to come over here and work for us? And I said, yeah, I'll come work for you. Will you pay for my doctorate degree? And they said, oh my God, of course we would pay for your doctorate degree. How could we imagine any company not supporting somebody who wants to advance their education? So that's what I did. I stayed with Cisco for a long time. It took me 7 years to get through the doctoral degree. But it was worth it. I ended up writing, I'm on my 10th book. So here's what's really interesting. I got very interested in technology. I started teaching. I was a professor at night for 15 years. And Stanford knocked on the door. They said, you're a very interesting person. You have these degrees now. You're technical, and you're working for high-tech firms. There's a program here called the Reuters Visiting Digital Scholarship. Would you like to come over here as a visiting scholar and continue your research on technology, on women, on higher education? And I said, gosh, John, I'll do it. Well, you know, I stayed with Stanford since 2000, and I do it part-time because I couldn't afford their tuition. So I have to go over there part-time and do my work there. So 1 quarter a year, I go back and forth to Stanford, and I continue. So that, in a very long nutshell, is my education. It hasn't stopped. So at the end of the day, you know, there's many more degrees that I wish I had. But the point is I had to, you just need it. At first I thought I had to check a box. Now I realize you really need it. And maybe in Silicon Valley, we see things before the rest of the country. I'm not sure. Maybe it's the high-tech aspect of so many of the firms here that put pressure. Maybe it's the competition because we're such a melting pot and have diverse, smart people moving in. I'm not sure, but if I can help the student, that's the first thing and the last thing that's on my list of things to do. So thank you for the question. I think I should end here. All right,